Wabagoosh! Welcome to Strife Talk Episode 5. This week with panel members Oppositional, Squeekee, and TekkySO. Now I hope all my fellow panel members are ready to boogie, and by boogie I mean jungle boogie, because this episode of Strife Talk is going to be all about the jungle. But before we head into jungling, there's just one thing I'd like to know from everybody. How has the removal of the small potions affected your laning phase and your gameplay? Who's ready to weigh in on this?
I'll go first. This is Squeaky, by the way. I would really like to say that this was a very poor decision on S2's part. Mainly, I haven't seen much use in the lane, because everyone knows Elixir will do the job when it comes to sustain. But the problem with Elixir is that one little hit, one little minion hit, whatever, cancels it out. The pot was the only form of sustain that would run regardless of being hit. In lane, it's not that big because of the amount of time it took, but in the jungle, where you don't have time to stop, you don't have time to just wait 7 seconds for your health to regen, the removal just hurts it. Like, in a game where, you know, it wasn't even a problem, they hurt an aspect of the game that hasn't even been explored yet. Like, many people aren't taking advantage of the jungle, and I think for a game that is targeted to casual players, removal of something that a lot of league players are used to, having pots, the second they take damage they hit a pot, you know, the people who come into this game, it's going to really throw them off. It's going to have, not having that sustain to where you can just hit it and, you know, the second you take damage is really off-putting for someone that might be a main jungle in something like League or even like Smite or something like that. Really hurts. Like, you know, the only having one form of sustain is very detrimental to the gameplay, and I think some people that used it in lane is feeling it too. A lot of people don't like having to hide in a bush for 7 seconds to get their health back. They just want to, you know, they take a little damage, they just want to get the regen going. Now, S2 did say that it was for the fact that a lot of people were replacing the components of health regen with it, and as a jungler I can say that yes, to an extent this is true. I never built health regen on my axe. I removed a lot of health regen components because I could just use these pots. But at the same time, when you're dumping in, you know, if you add up the amount of gold I use, you know, there's over 400 gold alone in pots. So I don't think that the removal was justified.
So do you think it impacts it in so much as it's being viable jungling with several heroes, or do you think it just slows it down?
I think it it just slows it down. Like, you know, unless if you're Hale, who can use, you don't even need an elixir with Hale. You can go with you know, nothing but your axe. It slows them down a lot. You know, before I could always keep myself topped. Now when I gank at level 2, I'm not going to be full health, so that already puts me at a disadvantage. Unless if I wait on regen, that's not viable. The whole point, unless if you're jungling Hale, your whole point is to apply pressure early. So you need to get there as early as possible. With that, you have to jungle now, and unless if you want to waste an elixir, waste half of it, you have to wait until you're low. It slows it down a lot. You know, it not only does it slow your ganking down, but it slows your jungle down.
Yeah. Not only does it slow down your ability to jungle, but I feel like Squeak said here, that decision came a little bit too soon. The game is still very young, and we haven't thoroughly tested out the jungle potential of any of the other champions aside of, you know, your Minervas and your Bow. We're still testing things out, and I feel like things that do not have sustain natively built into their kit are going to suffer the most from this change. Hale, who has that sustainability in his kit, hasn't taken too much of a blow, but, I mean, what about the other options? What about your Minerva? You know, I honestly, Max Luster Pet running Blood Rush with elixirs it's not gonna be gold efficient. I feel like it'd almost be just not viable to run certain jungles anymore. as we used to be able to when we had the pots in between camps. It's such a huge blow to what they had going in the jungle right now, at least in the game. Now, hopefully, that's something that they're evaluating, and maybe that's a change that came because of something that they're hoping to add in a patch to come. But right now, Hale is really looking to be the jungle king, and I really don't see anything following up at his pace right now in the jungle.
Yeah, I do agree that Hill is probably most viable to run in the jungle if you want to have a really successful game, because obviously it's a very difficult choice if you're playing competitive if you're going to run that jungler, because running the jungler means that you're basically delving into that experimental territory, and you're kind of breaking away from that really fluid meta that's currently solidifying. Um, so I think that if you're gonna run him in competitive play, you're most likely to end up with Hale. I just want to backtrack a little bit to the potions. Um, while I do get the underlying thought about taking out the potions because they felt that the regeneration they offered was simply too high, I don't think they took into account the lower HP heroes like Vermilion and Rook. My Rook play has been the most affected by this when you solo bot Rook. Um, with the potions, you could just send your courier your way with a couple potions, hit that potion, get that regen in, and you'd be able to apply a lot more pressure on your lane. And it's not really an unfair advantage because your opponent can do exactly the same even if you're at a gold disadvantage because the potions were cheap. It wasn't like you had to buy a potion for 400 gold or something, and you could only keep doing that if you had a very present laning phase, and thus, increasing your presence even more. Um, and you know, it's the thing is about the out of combat regeneration. The moment you take one hit, the regeneration stops. So it kind of forces you to fall back further than at least I would like to see it. I don't know how you guys feel about this.
I want to respond to that one real quick. I think part of the issue with removing potions wasn't so much that they were too good, it's just that not enough people used them. Because if you think about the fact that you only have two slotted items, two slots for consumable items like that, I think almost always I would see people opt for the elixir because it gives you so much regeneration so quickly, and it was also very useful for baiting bush and other stuff like that. So I'm not sure that removing the potions will impact lanes as much as you might otherwise think, because of the fact there's only two slots, and I think elixirs are preferable.
I know I stand to 50-50. I want to disagree just a little bit with that statement. Now, gold efficiency, purchasing those elixirs, in my honest opinion, is a huge drawback, especially in competitive play. You want every bit of lane advantage that you can get. You want to be getting your last hits. You also want to keep your overhead going. You don't want to dump however X amount into 2 to 3 elixirs to keep up where 2 potions used sparingly with your off CD regen would keep you up. Now, that honestly was one of my biggest arguments with the potion removal. It's like, hey, let's purchase 100 gold worth of pots, right? Chill out in the brush, pop one, get back to 75% or better, jump back in the lane, or sit in the brush for 7 seconds with an elixir going, and hope that I don't get hit, try to avoid the enemy, and possibly lose the gold spent on the elixir. It's, in my honest opinion, it's a drawback to have to send your courier to get elixirs every however much time. If you're in a losing lane and your opponent is besting you, and you have to keep dumping all that gold into elixirs to sustain, just to survive, well, where's your items? Where's your tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 items? Where's the gold going?
Yeah, sure, that's true. But we also, if we're gonna make the comparison, we need to make it fair and saying, well, the time that the potions that we're talking about are also the time where elixirs were on a 5 second regeneration rate, so it's 70 health per second, which was extremely high and incredible for turning fights, all sorts of other things that you could consider investments. So oftentimes you wouldn't consider elixirs just for their costs and their efficiency. You would consider them for um, as investments to other things.
As an investment for turning a fight?
As an investment for turning a fight, as an investment for preparing for a jungle gank, uh, if the situation was adequate but you were low on health. It was a pretty distinct advantage to have one if the enemy didn't have one for in several situations like that.
Yeah, well, turn by turn in lane, the opponent who still has his elixir.
You cut off.
The opponent who still has his elixir or his sustain in lane longer than the other usually is, in most situations will be the victor, right? It's like who's dumping their elixirs the quickest, who's spending gold to sustain, right? Now, yeah, it's awesome to have that elixir there to say, hey, I might be getting ganked, I might want to pop an elixir, or hey, I'm getting chased out, I'm gonna do a complete turn now and pop my elixir while running and come back and pull off a cool kill here. Those are all very viable, options and situations, and I agree with that. But I wouldn't say I would go into the lane with the mindset that I want to have an elixir to turn a fight, or I want to have an elixir to prepare for a jungle gank. I want to have an elixir to get that kill on my opponent, and then I want to have my dragon shield or my big item available to me as quickly as possible to turn a fight. I'm all about the in-game economy, and it's like if I can have my items quicker than anything on the map, that's key. And buying elixirs takes away from that.
So yeah, I mean, so definitely some different philosophies of use there. I think other situations that could come up are like things like you could, by having an elixir, you could turn the ebb and flow of a lane very quickly. Because if you go in for what would otherwise be an even trade, and you can position yourself with that elixir so that you can start bullying your lane, that can pay dividends later on for yourself and for your team. So I don't necessarily disagree with you that potions were a cost-efficient way of reducing your costs in lane and maximizing what would be your return in item sets and long-term power. But I think their removal doesn't necessarily create a dynamic where that will necessarily be missed because the other person won't have that either. So it's kind of like a little bit of a catch-22, if you will.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
As a jungler, because that's for the past probably 3 weeks, I've played nothing but jungle. I think I've laned once, and that's because Ryzen wanted a jungle. The biggest thing, I can handle having to go low on health and then use an elixir so I don't waste some of the regen, on being full health. I can handle that. The thing is that I used to start with spending only 100 gold, and I wouldn't have to worry about sustain and stuff until the next time I either sent my courier or beat. Now I have to spend 240. That's 140 gold that I usually would not spend. And what that did for me is it allowed me to, by my level 2, I was already purchasing the first components to my ranger vest. I built mine out of attack speed. I'd already have an agility stone or whatever on its way with 2 more pots. And that alone, you look at 4 pots, that's 200 gold. That's still less than 2 elixirs that I'd be spending. I'm still spending more money. I'm still being, it's still putting me behind in the jungle because of the fact that I have to spend money that I usually wouldn't spend. And in early game, 140 gold is a lot of gold to have to give up just to do something you've normally been doing, just to play the game how you've been playing it. It's a very, very big setback. And it doesn't affect lane as much in a situation like that, but then again, it might. Say someone that is used to starting 2 health pots in lane, and that's all they wanted to spend, and that was enough for them. That's still 140 extra gold that they saved, in which now they have to spend it. And like Techie, getting especially your first items is bigger than anything. If your first main item is a dragon shield, getting that should be your very top priority, because having an early dragon shield puts stuff in your advantage so much, especially if they're trying to build the same thing, but you got it first. Bam, you are at the advantage. And that advantage could have easily been 140 gold difference. Which, if people want to look at stuff and go, 140 gold, 140 gold. In this game, every little bit counts. Every last hit counts. Is very needed to get your first items, to get you on that roll. Once you're on a roll, gold, it's still just as important. But when you have the items to be something, to actually be a threat, it's not your top priority. Your first priority when you get to lane shouldn't be, how am I going to get this first blood, when first blood really isn't worth as much in most games anyways. It should be getting your first item, and that should be the main thing you should be focusing on. And as a jungle who I take less gold in for the favor of putting another lane, putting another carrier, whoever is playing that solo lane, I'm putting them ahead in levels. If they farm well, they'll be well ahead of gold. As someone who values every piece of gold in the jungle, 140 gold is huge. It's just huge. That's a whole camp worth of farm, that is huge. The only thing that really is bigger than that is like an ancient camp, which, early game, you're not going to be farming ancients all day anyways.
So it seems to me that what they need to then do is maybe not bring back potions, but somehow figure out a way of allowing some flexibility with regeneration in the jungle that goes beyond the bonuses of the axe and stuff.
I agree.
There's also another aspect.
There are many ways they could remedy the situation. But honestly, I think if they felt that the regen on the pot was too much, they should have just slightly toned it down some. Made it maybe a little less appealing for laners, and more, still keep the appeal that a jungler would have. Like I said, my biggest thing is that in the jungle, you're constantly getting hit by creeps if you want to farm. Well, you can't use elixirs when you're getting hit by creeps. In lane, there's a really big difference. You can hide in a bush, and you can still get some XP. You can still, leech off any creeps that die there, as to where in the jungle, I have to stand there. Just stand there doing nothing with my thumb in my butt. And that's not efficient. That's not efficient at all. I would take a weaker health pot over having to stand there for 7 seconds, or make sure I'm low enough so on my walk from one camp to another that I don't waste an elixir. Because if you use an elixir and it starts ticking past full health, not only are you spending more money, but now you've just wasted money.
How would you guys feel if, and I haven't fully thought this out, but what if the elixir's regeneration wasn't interrupted solely by jungle creeps? And also not the global objective ones? Or would that be too complicated?
No, honestly, I think that is a very good idea. I think make it to where it would still be interrupted by Cindy and Baldy. That way, you can't. That would create cheap tactics. Think about already the level 1 Cindy's that can happen, the level 1 Baldies. If you could get hit and still elixir by them, it would be stupid. Because everyone would do it at level 1 with elixirs, and there'd be no downfall. Now, the jungle camps, I think that would make it very viable. I think if they can, it's not hard code, but I think that would make it very, very viable. I wouldn't then have no problem outside of the extra gold spent using elixirs in the jungle.
What do you think, Techie, about that idea?
I'm thinking about that right now, and this statement was that the neutral camps won't disrupt the elixir return. That's the statement that was made.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Just the standard neutral jungle camps.
I feel like that is a good and viable option. It might be a little too good. I'm not sure, because if you throw an uninterruptible elixir on top of Hail, who's jungle clear speed's already fast, it might supercharge him. You know, I'm not sure. It might throw certain junglers, or just in this situation, Hale, through the roof. You know, it might improve his clear time so fast that his advantage might be a little too great.
Yeah,
now,
it will be staggering, to
as
say the
someone
least.
who has jungled Hale strictly as a farmer, I'm gonna tell you, I've jungled Hale and I've sat on those 2 elixirs and never even used them. Like his sustain is plenty alone. You don't even need the elixirs. Like I said, you could start and then just go in the game without elixirs and be fine.
Techie, in response to what you just said, I think it goes back to what you guys were saying about when you want to hit your item, like at what time you want to hit your item benchmarks, right? So, I mean, if you can already hit those with Hail, right, it might waste your money to go ahead and buy the elixirs for Hail only, but it might make other junglers viable.
Yeah, I mean, think about. Well, let's also look at it this way, guys. Let's look at it like, what about your jungle route? The jungle route is optimized in a way where you can clear the smaller camps more efficiently without taking big blows to your health pool, right? What if an elixir thrown on top of a Hail that doesn't even use elixirs could present yellow neutral camp kills much earlier in levels that could shoot his GPM so high that he achieves that T3 item several minutes before anyone on the map? You know, like what if something like that could potentially change a route per se?
It would definitely increase the route, because getting the yellow ancient camps would become a lot more viable earlier. A lot of times, even Hail jungle, you'll bluster and axe one of the ancients and walk off to the next until you come back to him, and then you'll finish the 2. I think that, you know, you'd obviously see a Hail finishing those ancients right off the bat, and ancients alone give 225 gold, you know, so that's definitely a big boost getting those ancients. But, you know, when you think about it, I think someone like Minerva or a Bow would be able to clear the ancients as well if the elixirs work that way. You know, Hail obviously will still come out a little bit healthier, but I think it would still allow, you know, the more viable jungles that we have now still be able to clear the ancients just as efficiently if the elixir would run, because elixir early game is pretty much full health.
What if you just
Talking
limited
about-
it to the what if you just limited it to the normal neutral camps and not the ancient or global camps?
I think it wouldn't even be a problem then, because like I said, the way I jungle Hail right now, you never need an elixir. The only time you use an elixir is if you were caught out or you were ganked or whatever, and you somehow found yourself low. But if you are just farming jungle, you will never run out of health.
That way you could also juggle the ancient ones with the other junglers. If you could just buy an elixir, you would buy it anyway in case you needed it. If you didn't and you got there, you could start them up and use an elixir in between them.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
I think that is a really good idea, and it wouldn't affect the power of elixir in lanes one bit. So.
How much gold is that? That's like 750 gold. That's 127 GPM bump in like a second, in like 2 seconds. Could you imagine if you could double elixir? You guys are saying you don't even need the elixirs, right? What if you just cleared your side, right? Cleared like 2 or 3 small camps, yellow neutral your side, yellow neutral enemy side, right? Hope maybe get a chest in there. I mean, I feel like I wish I had known that Hail was this disturbingly broken, because I mean, why aren't we running small camp into ancient then with double elixirs? Why aren't we taking advantage of that GPM bump?
Well, first, I think there's going to be significant travel time between them. If you think about your pathing, because you don't want to show in lane, right? So you're going to have to path a little bit weird even to begin. So it might be worthwhile. I haven't done any numbers on that, but you could do it maybe.
I mean, Gully's not even buying elixirs. What? I mean, that's unbelievable. I mean, I knew Hail Sustain was absurd, but I mean, have we tried any pre-level 3 yellow camp kills yet in the routes in competitive play?
No, it's definitely something that I think should be experimented on. The yellow camps are very strong, and it's something that I think don't get taken advantage of. It's one of the things that makes jungle strong. And if you're not running a jungle, I think someone needs to be taking the yellow camps.
Well,
Well,
here's
you know,
another
we have
question.
the after matches. Hold up. You know, we have the after matches after the show to play with the viewers. I feel like maybe we should try that out. Take it into practice.
Yeah, I really feel like that could be something incredible, or incredibly broken for the game, the state of the meta right now. I can't wait to see.
We'll see. And coming back to viewers, when we started the discussion about potions and jungling, Mash V, he said, problem is not only a viable jungler, but also the guy that stays in the lane against two. It becomes a lot hard to stand against them, mainly because you can't even take minion aggro to pull them away from the tower. So you try clearing the creep wave under the tower, but, well, 2v1.
Well, once again, this is speaking on whether or not. I guess it depends on the situation and what character you're in the solo lane with. Now, um, going into the solo phase, right? Knowing that I have a jungler, I would play a champion. I'd play a character that I know has incredible wave clear, aka Moxie. Right now, we know, right, that it's very easy to get shut down in a lane if you happen to show up in a solo, right, with a melee, like a melee character in lane, or you get put in a situation when you're going up against double range. Yeah, that presents a situation that you may not be prepared for, and it could throw you off. But in competitive play, you throw a Moxie up into that lane, right? You shoot out a couple Ws, a couple Qs. You may not be getting the gold you want, right, from your lane, but you are still getting experience. You know, you may not be last hitting every single minion under your tower, right? But you are still being granted that experience. You're still being granted those levels. You are gaining that natural stat. You are getting that natural stat advantage on your solo. And in the same example, Moxie, for example, you got two people pushed under your tower. You're clearing waves, getting your experience. There will be a turning point. You will out-harass them. You will turn the lane. You will get a supporting gank from your jungle, and you will capitalize off of it. You just need to play. You need to play that initial passive game. You need to let the wave push forward. You need to do what you need to do to harass here and there. Once it's under your tower, it's your game, man. It's really up to you how you want to handle the situation.
Yeah,
It very much boils down to team composition. Like I said, if you choose, it's not something I envision that's going to happen a lot in non-competitive play. But in competitive play, obviously, before you begin, you have a certain strategy. You pick your composition, and like I said before, running a jungler is a very conscious choice, and you need to add the right ingredients to your composition. So, like you said, Techie, I agree very much with that statement. If you toss the hill in the jungle, you need the Moxie in the lane for the solo flavor. So you have your two solo lanes, and Moxie, you've said this before, with this W, Moxie is very well able to handle a 2v1 lane, because it gives him sustain. It gives him his mana, his poke. Now we had a little argument here where whether or not you could outpoke Moxie. I think there are certain heroes that have a great range that can potentially outpoke a Moxie, but keep in mind that Moxie was specifically designed to poke and kite, so he seems like a very natural choice to bring to lane if you're gonna run a jungle.
Right.
Yeah, I think part of what this hinges on is whether or not that duo versus solo lane can sufficiently freeze a lane and push the solo laner out of farm and XP without causing the creep of the solo lane to be engaged with the harasser, right? So if you can push someone off, you may well be able to completely shut down that lane. And if you don't shut it down, you might end up pulling the jungler out of the jungle into the lane to try to rebalance it somehow. If you do the numbers, you only need to deny about roughly 2 creep per lane to the solo laner, assuming that the duo lane is getting perfect CS, which is not entirely unreasonable in competitive play. You only need to really deny 2 of them in order for the gold income of each individual player in that lane to be roughly the same. So with that in mind, if you're able to accomplish that, yes, the solo laner is going to have an XP advantage, but the duo laners are going to potentially reach an item advantage that might offset any level advantage that the solo laner has when the jungler comes to gank.
Really, that's very situational. You're looking at people, you know, you're saying that the dual lane is getting perfect farm. And with anyone harassing, that's not going to happen. Like, it's very hard to pull off perfect farm with Moxie throwing balls at you all day.
Yeah, I don't know. In competitive play, perfect CS versus 2 competent players, highly unlikely. It becomes a game of trying to get your last hits while not overcommitting the last hits and getting poked down while getting last hits. You know, it's perfect CS means you're dominating your lane. It means your opponents are getting destroyed. You know, they're pushed back and they're afraid to contest you for creep in lane. What usually happens is, obviously, elite versus elite, right? There's gonna be one side that may be playing a little bit better, but you know, plus or minus a few here and there. It may start off fairly neutral in lane with creep kill, but as the game progresses and players make mistakes and items are bought, the talent between the players starts to show, and all of a sudden you're not getting creep kills. Now it's I'm surviving because my opponent is mechanically proficient and he's pushing me out of my lane. I mean, it's in the perfect world. Hey guy, you're getting your CS, I'm getting my CS, and he's getting his too, and we're just all getting gold, right? But I don't see that happening very often in competitive play.
Now, making the step from competitive play to pub play, I know it's not really our alley at this point to go solo queue all day or YOLO queue. But the thing is, we're talking here with the competitive eye on it. But there are lots of new players incoming this weekend for the timed open beta. What advice could we give them to run a jungle? Because in my experience, when I solo queue when there's nobody online and like I have to do it, I always try to run a jungle. I'm like, well, I'm not with the team, might as well try something new anyway. So I pick Hill, who's strong in the jungle, and I end up kind of like not being able to jungle because I spend so much time running around trying to help my lanes, and I don't get to spend all that much time in the jungle. Now, if you're a new player this weekend and you want to try out the jungle, what would you have to do to ensure that you get the chance to jungle? That if you make that conscious decision to stay in the jungle as opposed to helping your team out, that it won't end up costing you the game.
I think Squeekee should answer this one. Could you go over maybe your setup in terms of pets, items, and then the decisions that you make and stuff?
Okay, if you're going to be starting off the game, obviously Hail is the way to go. The problem is that if in this situation you're assuming everyone's new. Most people aren't going to be able to handle a 1v2 lane if they're new. That's just how it is. A lot of people don't realize how little damage you can take early game. If you're 1v2 and say you're Rook, but you're against Malady Ace, they're gonna jump on you and kill you. But let's just assume that benefit of the doubt, these new players are experienced in MOBAs and they can handle this. Hail is the number one. If you're new to the game, you're new to this jungle, you don't understand what routes and whatnot. You can take Hail and you can go almost any route. Do not start Ancients and try to kill them all because it's not worth the time. The problem with Hail is that in comparison to, say, let's say we're talking about like League of Legends, this is how I compare it. Hail is like Shyvana. Hail jungles fast, clears fast, will be the highest, unless someone's getting kills early, Hail will be the highest GPM on the team with his jungle speed. He will pull in them, and this is without the bonus gold from Luster. I do not run the bonus gold from Luster. I love the sustain that the health upon creep kill give. You don't have to be the one to kill the creep. You could be by a lane, and all those creeps could die, and you'll get all that health. Hail is the Shyvana. And if you try to gank early, you're really risking it. You're saying, okay, I'm going to try to gank, I'm going to try to get a kill in, but if it fails, all you did is set yourself back. Maybe apply a little pressure to a lane. If you go into Hail, you need to tell your team, look, I'm not going to gank I'm not going to do heavy ganks until 6. Once you hit 6 as Hail, your mission should be to kill. It shouldn't be, let's farm. Early game, Hail, you farm. Say you don't want to Hail. Say you're like, I want to play jungle like I play in another MOBA. I play really aggressive. I want to gank early. Go to Bo. Bo is the best level 2 ganker. He has AoE clear with his Q. So he, a Q is like almost about 2 auto attacks, when you hit everything. A little bit less. So his clear speed is not up to par with Hail, but it keeps up. It definitely, you don't be left behind. The difference is that at level 2, you have a movement speed boost. You have a ranged slow that does a lot of damage, just base damage. You don't need power. And you have a stun. And at level 2, bot lane is very, very easy to gank. They won't have an escape item. They might have an escape pet. They might have an escape ability. A lot of times, though, people are really aggressive bot lane. People go bot lane and they think it's just this 1v1 lane and that it's a matter of skill. And it's not. This is where you prove them that jungle makes the biggest difference in the game. Because you can go bot lane level 2, get them a kill, and although first blood isn't as big in other MOBAs, the thing is when you get that first blood, even with a fast respawn time, they're going to miss all those creeps. They're going to get set back all that time. So go bow and apply pressure. Go to bot lane at level 2, gank. If it was successful or not, whatever. Kill creep camper 2, go mid, gank. And a lot of times you want to sit between those 2 camps until around level 5 and 6 when you need a pressure body. So, in my opinion, when you jungle, you want to, the first half of your 1 through 6, 1 through 5 is applying pressure to mid and bot lane. This is the biggest thing. You need to just apply pressure. It's just like if you're in League and you're applying pressure to mid and top lane. This is the exact same deal. You need to apply that pressure. You need to make that. And say you gank, and say the only thing that came out of it was a pet spell and they ran away. Well, not only did they run away, but they ran away from creeps. They ran out of XP range. You put that lane ahead. Right there alone, you've put that lane ahead. You've done your job. A pet spell, has long cooldown. That alone means you can just come back and gank. Just like any other MOBA, keep an eye on these things. Keep track when people blow long cooldown things. Use it to your advantage. Use the pressure to your advantage. Like I said, Hail can't do that. Hail, you want to jungle your new, play Hail, farm. You can do that at 6. But if you've jungled before, you have the experience. You need to take that experience and use it just like you would in any other MOBA. You get your early game CC, you go in, you apply your pressure. Now, when you play these junglers, you need to accept the fact that you will be a little bit behind all the lanes. One lane is going to be ahead and on par with the bot lane like they should, and you're going to be slightly behind. A lot of times you'll be even with top lane, a little bit behind. If you're having a good game though, you can be MVP. You can be MVP Bo in the jungle. You can be MVP Bastion in the jungle. It's just about making those plays. You can't play Hail, do that farming, and then play someone like Bastion, Bo, Minerva in the jungle and try to farm like that. You're not made for it.
Yeah, one caveat though to what you're saying, and this is something that whoever jungles needs to keep in mind. As soon as you show yourself bottom, right? because since you're a jungler, there's an implied 2v1 somewhere else on the map. You need to be able to communicate to the team member that it is likely going to be the case that they will be aggressed on, from resulting from the fact that the jungler showed his position. A lot of what the jungle power comes from, it comes from the fear of being ganked, and that kind of mental pressure that you're applying throughout the game. So the caveat is suppose you do go bottom and you can only blow a pit ability, and then top lane dies. Now you have a strong majority of your team power on the other side of the map, unless you're running a Vex or something that can just teleport top, and you run the risk of not only losing a lane and denying all that creep, also losing a tower and losing momentum in the game and control in the game. So yeah, I mean, that's something to keep in mind.
It's definitely it's definitely there, and then that's you're betting on the reaction time of your opponents. A lot of times you'll be running the second solo lane in mid, and the thing is that in depending on who you're playing, unless the time it takes to pop an elixir, you can be from bot to mid. The small map makes it to where, okay, say you're communicating, say you're playing with some buddies or whatnot, and you got your buddy, and this isn't competitive play. This is just some friends playing Strife, and your buddy's in the mid lane solo. You can a lot of times use, if he knows he's going to get jumped on when you show and whatnot, and he plays defensive enough to where he doesn't take a lot of damage, you can use that to your advantage. Because if they use all their CDs, unless if there's someone, it's like a Moxie Q or something like that, a lot of times their cooldowns are going to be still ticking by the time you reach mid. And like I said, you need to constantly bounce back and forth between mid and bot. So if you have a gank bot and you're full in health, it doesn't matter if you're going to lose a potential level. You go straight to mid. You apply that pressure, especially if you know that they just blew a lot of stuff trying to do damage to the mid lane, because of the reaction to them seeing you. This is why you run the mid lane. This is why you camp between the two, and then you switch when Baldy becomes a threat, so you don't let them have Baldy control. But the map size is so small that Hale alone, he just moves. He has like one of the fastest base move speeds, so his walking back and forth is nothing. But if you get an early pair of boots on any of the other jungles, the speed it takes to get from one lane to another, a lot of times you can catch them in the act while they're trying to go, balls deep on the solo lane. A lot of times you can do that and turn it around. And if solo lane's smart, they will be running like a healing rod, something that can easily turn battles if people overcommit. Yeah, it is, like you said, it's definitely a threat. It's going to be there, but I think that's something that's in every MOBA that runs any kind of jungle. It's just the same in any other where the jungle shows, and if the team is smart, on the other side of the map, they'll use that to their advantage however they can, whether it be pushing a tower, taking an objective, or going balls deep in a 1v2.
Yeah, but one thing about that though is that under the situation I presented to you, right, which is not a situational, right, like the situation that we're talking about now, if you focus bot lane and top lane goes wrong, you run a very high risk of losing Baldir or losing bot lane, because what it becomes is at best a 4v5, right? I mean, I'm sorry, at worst a 4v5, right? But what you can have is a situation where the two top laners and the two mid laners go, you roam mid, and then it becomes a 3v4 in your fighting for Baldir. And then that gives leeway for bot lane to create further pressure, maybe pushing the bot tower. So, I mean, I know this is a lot of situational stuff, but ganking, if it doesn't succeed and other things go wrong on the map, especially in this game, provides that kind of situation where depending on how you gank your gank path, it affects, it can snowball in other lanes, whereas snowballing in the lane that you ganked is less of a threat. Right, you might get the first blood, you might be able to push that tower, right? But it actually gives a lot of control to the team that's running the 2-2-1 scenario with the Baldir and the early game gold advantage.
Well, I think a lot of people seem to be objectifying what the state of the jungle is right now in this game, and I think we're a little off as to what should be going on with the jungle right now. The character pool is very small, and a lot of
the only characters that are available right now that can jungle lack CC in their kit, or hard CC. There's a few that have some soft CC that are skill shots, right? And then you got Bo with a stun. But at the moment, Hale is the strongest jungler, and he doesn't even have soft CC in his kit. He has one hard CC at 6, which is a stun, right? But he gets that at 6. What you want right now out of the jungle, and I have to agree with what Ryzen said about viability and it not being viable right now in competitive play, to a certain extent, it doesn't seem viable because it's being done wrong. You don't play the jungle right now, at least in this current state of the meta, how it's done in other MOBAs. You don't clear camp, clear camp, clear camp, go for a gank. Clear camp, clear camp, clear camp, go for a gank, and try to feed your carries. That's what I would say you should be doing, is trying to get your carries fed, get that gold bonus, and prioritizing on making big gank plays. But currently, the game is very forgiving, and there's a lot of different ways you can get out of very sticky situations pre-6, and obviously boots, big boot upgrades. You should really be focusing on objective control. I mean, you should really be focusing on GPM and pushing objectives. Bound, like you said, if you want to go for a kill bot, sure, you can shoot for a gank bot, right? Push him down, get a couple hits on him, get him low, get him hurting, get him scared at the tower, take the tower. Take the objective. Push the objective.
I 100% agree with that. I can't tell you how many times I've been able to take a tower just from a successful gank, and it doesn't even have to lead to a kill. Anything to where he is too afraid to come near can easily be a tower kill. And on tier 1, if you have the chance to go for it, chances are their bot lane is going to be a Rook or a Verm, something with a lot of damage to a tower. Take it fast. And that's another reason why I always say, jungle towards bot lane in the beginning half, and then, come level 5, focus towards top, because Baldy is an imminent threat. 2 people, it doesn't matter who they are, can go take Baldy at level 5. And you can do it even earlier, it's just chances are they're not going to. It's very risky to do any early game Baldies. But yes, objectives is huge, and that's something. If you play Hale, come level 5, you should be taking Baldir. You should that should be a part of your routine. A few other junglers can do it at level 5, but not nearly as well as Hale.
Exactly. I mean, and who's
Now-
to say that you don't just completely control one half of your jungle? Everybody's saying, hey, well, it puts the solo guy in a poor situation versus 2 players, which can be very favorable for the solo who's getting level advantage, right? Well, who's to say that, the Hale doesn't push a camp, get a camp, control an objective, come top, go up there with a double-leveled solo, apply some lane pressure, get some GPM, and bound back out. I mean, the state of the meta right now is still young, and the jungle should be played solely around objectives. The only reason it's not viable is because everyone's trying to go for these big gank plays, and they're failing, and people are turning fights, and things aren't working out for the jungle right now, and it's because it's being done wrong. I mean, the map is very small. Obviously the map size is pushed more towards objective. It's more objective oriented. So, I mean, the jungle should then therefore be playing around objectives. Early Baldir. Baldir is the most crucial early game up to mid game. You get 2 or 3 Baldirs up to mid game, and all your gold advantage is going to be so huge, and players are going to have items so much faster than their opponents. And I feel that's where the attention should be with the jungle. Get a Baldir, go sit in the lane, and help the solo out. Okay, go get a couple camps, get Ancient, go get another Baldir, go back up, sit in the lane.
Yeah, if you're gonna run a jungle, obviously it's key that you keep putting that pressure on Baldir, because if you're gonna grow in the jungle, you're people are gonna know that you're in there. They're gonna know that you're there wrecking shit up if you're like a hill or something. It's kind of like when Bo gets his farm. A rolling bow is damn scary, and if you keep going for Baldir, you'll just keep you're just kind of like leaving your mark. Like, this is my territory. Get out. We got this. You're basically owning that zone, that part of the map, and of course, we also have Sindara. um, who's um, of course, we also have Sindara, and the enemy team might respond by putting pressure on Sindara. But if you do your job right as a jungle, that means you're going to have a very strongly felt presence in the top lane and in the middle lane. So yeah, if you take Baldir on top of that, you're pretty much going to start owning the game, and there's not much they can do because we've seen this in the previous game. When you leave Krydos unattended, when you're like at that natural advance and you choose to leave Krydos unattended and just like counter push, and then the last second when they're towards that generator, you start taking down Krydos. He goes down quite easily. I don't think Krydos is as strong as maybe he should be yet.
No, he definitely needs a buff.
Hey.
Well,
I
can
just-
I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So in the situation you proposed, Techie, where you focus on the bottom objective, like say the turret, and you get him low, and you let him just sit there and simmer while you take their turret and they can't do anything. What stops the top lane from just shoving all the way up and doing the same thing on a 2v1?
The solo. It's almost impossible. Just any player that's anything that is prepared for the solo lane will be something with wave clear. I would love to see any combination of characters dive a newly buffed and upgraded turret under a plus leveled wave clearing Moxie. I'd love to see it without trading a mutual kill or granting some form of losing something out of it. You're not going to get the tower. I can tell you that much right now. Not versus a Moxie. It won't happen. Maybe in a you might get that player who's like, oh, yellow dive, I'm gonna try and 1v2 and not think about it, but versus a competent player, you will be punished. You will, if you dive, you will give this player a double kill, 9 times out of 10, or he'll get a kill and back away and get out and regain some health and come back in the lane.
No, I know, I understand that. I'm saying, what if instead of trying to go for the kill, you tried the same strategy and just go for the top tower, right, at that point?
Right,
And-
once again,
But also, this is very contingent on having a particular champion right now, right? Fulfilling a role. I mean, if we ever get competitive, I'm assuming we're going to have picks and bans. So, I mean, does the jungling work for this reason? Because it is by itself a good idea, or because there's one hero that enables a strategy in top lane so that there's no counter strategy to pushing bot lane?
Right now, it's really too early to say. There hasn't been enough experimentation with it. But I mean, Moxie's not the only one that can clear. Malady has really good clear too, especially if they're under the tower and creeps are guaranteed to stay where they're at. She can clear waves, and she has the CC that if you do attack her under tower, you're going to be stunned. You're going to be hurting from it.
Bo does too.
Yeah, Bo does too, and Bo, you'll see Rise and you'll see other people build them power bow and whatnot. But I honestly think it's as long as you end up getting some defense, it's completely viable. It's more of a bruiser build. Pure power, I don't think it's really viable because a smart team will kite you and burn you down before you can even ult them. But as long as you have enough to where you can eat some damage, Power Bow is completely viable. He can clear waves, he can stun, he can sustain, he can handle a solo lane. He's going to be a little bit less farmed than a Moxie, because he's going to have less last hits. But Bow, and this is the same in the jungle, can always fall back on the cheap, efficient tank items. Bo can always buy a dampening cloak and a GG crest, and can do his job on that. He can be a tank and stun and set up plays and be a playmaker just on cheap items. And he scales well with levels. His Q does insane damage just with levels. Doesn't need power. You put power on it, and he's clearing waves, and he's giving people chunk sandwiches all day. There's multiple people that can clear the rule. It's not just Moxie. Moxie right now, just with how the heroes are, is the most favorable for a 1v2 lane.
First of all, we need to get a special icon for a chunk sandwich. That's a good phrase. I really like that.
Yep. Dish
but
chunk sandwich.
the chunk sandwiches. But I think part of the issue with these other things we're mentioning, it goes back to that thing. It's like, are these other part of the reason that we kept going back to Moxie is that we think that of the heroes that we currently have available to us, he stands the best chance of not being completely pushed out of lane to the point that they can't farm at all, because of the way his W interacts with his regeneration and being a damage source.
And yeah, I mean, I will tell you right now that I've run my sustain build consisting of a chalice, healing rod, and tortoise, the turtle regenerative passive activatable, and it's like I have won. I have neutralized 1v3 before with Moxie. So I mean, literally shoots out a W, gets mana back and health back on the mana spent. I mean, that combination of items in his kit is just, it's terrifying. And I mean, I feel like, sure, if picks and bans do come back to competition and someone's like, hey, if they're gonna run a jungle, let's ban out Moxie. It might force you to play something that may not be as great as wave clearing, but as long as you can survive and you can ward off that 2-minute tower. I mean, I find it hard to believe that two people versus one in that solo situation can take the tower that early. I've seen a Trilane do it. I've seen Vex do it. I've seen Kaizen do it. But I see it. I don't think that's very. It's not very common, and it's very hard to do versus a talented player.
Since we're delving a bit more into the mechanical side of this, who do you think is the least viable hero to ever step foot in the jungle? I think you'd probably have a really bad time as Ray, for example, in the jungle.
Ray, I'm gonna tell you, I've fooled around, not in a real game or anything. In real games, I've jungled Bastion, Bow, Hail, and Malady. And I just recently started fooling around with Vex. In real games. Now, clear wise, Ray's not that bad. If you're looking for a quick clear to gank, Ray's not that bad. The problem with Ray is that after your first clear, after your first run, then you're hurting, and then you become way less viable. Yeah, you have a slow and you have a stun, but you can't set up 3 mines on every camp. You can't.
If you solve his sustain, then obviously Ray is a very good asset to have in the jungle, because Ray has a really good CC kit, so he's kind of like a natural at popping out from the sides of the jungle and helping gank the lane. But keeping him in the jungle is too hard. I don't think I think that's why he's like the least viable to take to the jungle.
I don't think anything's more awful in the jungle than Carter. Carter may be the worst jungle
Carter, yeah, I'm gonna
in the
have to
game.
say Carter. Even if you max W and E for just pure AOE and clear, Carter's gonna be the worst in the jungle.
He has nothing.
He has nothing. His slow is meh. His ult can be ran away from. His clear, I mean, I haven't ran it, but I'd imagine isn't that impressive.
It's completely terrible.
And he's squishy. I mean, he's really, really, really squishy.
Without a dragon shield, he's the worst.
Yeah, he is. I mean, even then, Carter's a very, right now, in my opinion, is one of the higher skill capped heroes. Sure, you can just spam rockets and stuff all day, but a lot of times, whenever I play Jungle Bow, if I can get onto their Carter, chances are I'm going to kill him or force him out of that fight, because there's nothing he can do with me in his face. And that's one of the things, like a lot of Carters, they're really, you can catch them out of position. Even good player, people playing Carter, they'll get fed and they'll think they're just this burst machine, but they don't realize how squishy they are. And Carter in the jungle, I would have to say, I agree with Tekky there, would have to be the worst. He's someone that needs farm, needs power, and needs to know how to play like a giant wimp. And you can't play like a giant wimp when you're playing jungle. You have to man up and make sure you're delivering a chunk sandwich to every lane that you can.
So where do we stand now with this conversation? Are we then saying that jungle is a situational thing, or are we saying that there are situations where jungle doesn't work? I mean, is it favorable to say that jungle works on the average case, or does it not work on certain cases?
I'm gonna say from my experience right now, because right now it's just too early to say official. Like this is something that needs to happen. You need to have a jungle. It's not like that point where it is in other MOBAs where it's just like a must have. But in my experience, so far it has been favorable. I do plan on hopefully getting a team together and being able to work more on proving the viability of jungle. If the question is purely is it viable, yes, I think it is incredibly viable. Is there conditions that need to be met? Is there things yeah, more so than any other game. A lot of times in other MOBAs it doesn't matter as much who's going where. I mean, outside of whatever the meta might be. In this game, since there's very you can't send a Minerva in a 1v2 lane. You just can't do it. It's not gonna happen. Minerva's gonna be so done. But there's other champs that you can send who it almost favors them to be in the 1v2 lane. That scale well with levels alone. Yeah, they scale well with items, but levels alone are enough to get kills for them. And having that advantage, having a 1 to 2 level advantage is huge. Not only in skills, but people forget about base stats. People forget about armor and magic resist per level, health regen per level, all that that you gain per level, and it's one of the factors that makes it viable. In YOLO queue, a little less. You join a team like I said, and you end up sticking. Or even worse, you end up with a team full of melees or something. You can't have a melee soul lane unless it's bow is really hard. Double melee top is hard if they have any range at all. So it's definitely something that needs to be balanced out and kind of thought of a little bit beforehand, or at least have the right conditions met. But I think when the game expands its heroes, I think 10 more heroes from now, I think you're going to see jungle being a standard in the meta.
Does it worry you guys that sometimes if you don't get ahead in jungle, then it becomes a burden to the team that there's a jungler, especially because you have to invest probably in an axe early, and therefore you're, I don't know exactly off the top of my head how much it is, but you're that much goal behind in terms of team fighting capability come mid game and late game.
I'm going to give a bit of political answer here, which also ties into the first question you asked, Oppositional. I think that jungling currently is viable in Strife, but you have to take great care to pick a proper team composition. So I don't see it as something that naturally fits into non-competitive play, or at least non-party play. I'll say non-party play, where you don't have the option to communicate with your team beforehand and lay down a well-thought through, a well-formed plan. In other MOBAs, if we take League of Legends, for example, you have a very specific plan for a jungler. I mean, it's even a running gag, blame the jungler. And the main benefit for me, when I play League of Legends Classic mode, the main benefit I find of going for that jungle role is that there's, for the first part of the game, there's not that much pressure on you. At least I don't feel that there's that much pressure. You have your smite, you go stalk a few neutrals, your creeps, you do your thing, it's all good. And then, comes ganking time, and that's when the action hit, and you didn't have to worry about, oh shit, did I get outzoned in my lane? Did I have a good laning phase? Now, in Strife, in non-party play, when you don't have the option to put together that well-seasoned, tasty team, one of the situations that can really mess up your game is what Nashville said in the chat. He's been really responsive, by the way, so that's cool. Thank you very much, Nashville. He said, like, if you have a jungler and your team's not adjusted to it, you're gonna lose the tier 1 tower in the solo lane, in the extra solo lane, in like 2 to 3 minutes. Well, obviously it's not going to be 2 to 3 minutes. It's going to be a little bit longer. But you end up losing that relatively relatively fast, and that can quite easily start throwing people off. And yeah, that's kind of why I don't see it. It's viable, but I don't see it as a must, as something that has to be in every game. Um, because if it goes wrong, it does so much more than it does good. And in the other MOBAs, like I said, like for example, League of Legends. The jungle has something unique to offer for players, kind of something comforting. Like you can sit in a zone with less pressure and know that you're still doing your part, that you're still gonna be useful, and that you're not gonna be like under leveled, sticking there at level 4 when everybody has their ulti and their full rotation, and that doesn't really apply to Strife yet.
Yeah, but there's one very important distinction between games like League and the current Strife jungle is the fact that if you fall behind in League, there's ways for you to significantly come back because you have access to buffs um, that artificially increase your power when you have them. Um, that you don't have in Strife. In Strife currently, the jungle is all about maintaining a high level of pressure and concurrently a high level of gold income. Uh, when you get behind, those goals make it extremely difficult for you to come back without other resources like buffs. Um, and I think that's where a lot of the complaints currently come from. Where, as you said, when you have a public match where the jungler is highly inexperienced, because I think Squeak is probably shaking his head over there when you said it doesn't work in pubs. But I think
Well, no, I slightly agree, because like you said, some people just, they don't know how to play the lanes, they're, it's a lot different. Which
yeah,
is
but you carry them, dude.
yeah, I try.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. But I agree in that sense that in public games where the jungler is not experienced or not very experienced, they can be quite the burden, coupled with someone that doesn't know how to do a 2v1. Because I know you guys know how to do a 2v1. I know how to do a 2v1, but a lot of people overcommit or don't know how to balance getting creeps and staying alive very well, and taking harass, I mean. So I think here's the issue, right? It doesn't quite work in pubs. It doesn't quite work in competitive, especially if you have a banning phase with the way it's currently set up. And once you're behind, you're so behind that it makes it incredibly hard to make a case for jungling. So it's very reliant on a lot of. I guess my biggest challenge with jungling is that it's very reliant on a lot of things going well.
It's
Yes,
because
exactly.
there's definitely like I said, a situational thing where conditions have to be met. I just think, the ban thing, I don't think it's going to be, if we start putting in bans anytime soon, with the amount of champs we have here, you can only ban, like, what, one, maybe two a team. Even two a team, that's four. That's a huge, decrease. So it's going to be a one, hero ban per team. If it's going to be how it is now, until we have more heroes, it's not viable to have any more bans in that, because then you're cutting out,
I agree.
a third of the roster. If we were to ban two per team, that's four people. That's almost a third of the roster, and it's just not going to happen that way. But so say they ban, what are they, in my opinion, they ban Bo. If I want to jungle a tank, I can jungle Bastion. Both are banned. I can jungle Hale. There's multiple. The bans I don't think is going to be a really big issue, unless if it was directed target, like specifically at a team strat that the other team knew you wanted to run. And otherwise, any good team's going to have a plan B.
Yeah, and that's kind of like where it becomes challenging is if you're dependent on having a very set plan B. I mean, you should be able to just adapt to what's going on in the game. Having two strats concurrently that you're planning, where one's contingent on the jungle screwing up something, it makes it.
There should always be a plan on if jungle doesn't
Yeah,
doesn't work.
Neshul said hail ban equals no jungle, which is, with the pot thing we're talking about.
I just feel like that's a burden, though, just to begin with. The jungle. I'm gonna give some negative feedback here on on the jungle, at least in the state of the meta right now. Like it's
a competitive play, it's 50%, maybe not even 50% viable. In the pub, I wouldn't even recommend it until you have a thorough knowledge of the game and you have enough food to upgrade your luster to 6 to get blood rush passives. I wouldn't even recommend touching the jungle until you've read a guide or two at Strife HQ and you have an understanding of the game that's thorough enough and comprehensive enough to be able to adapt on the fly like that. And going into a game saying that I might need to fall out of the jungle and just completely not jungle anymore because I failed in the jungle, maybe something that you should, and I guess I encourage a pub player to do. But in competition, you cannot go into a competitive game, right? And say, hey, all right, guys, I'm going to jungle. This is our comp. Our comp's built around me jungling. I'm going to do this, and if this doesn't work, I'm just not going to jungle anymore. And that's not the team's fault, and that's not obviously the player's fault. I feel that's just because that's just happening because the player pool is small. I mean, the character pool is small, and there's just not a lot of option available right now. Which further supports my statement in that if we have to go in with a plan B for jungling, jungle is not viable. It shouldn't be.
I agree.
Well, you should always have a plan B for any strategy you run. If you're planning to run a tri-lane, you should have a plan B in case it fails. Whatever strategy you run, you should have a plan B.
It's not that it's not viable.
It just happens to be that the name of your strategy this time is jungle and not a tri-lane
but jungling isn't
maybe running solo top and then like 1-2-2 instead of 2-2-1 and then apply super pressure bot lane, get tower, and then rotate lanes.
Squeaks, I super agree with what you're saying, but jungling isn't necessarily a strat. It's more so a game mechanic. It's more so something that comes.
It usually is, but I think in like you said with the character pool, with how everything is right now, I think it is actually more of a team strat.
So you think it becomes a strat per se?
I think,
I think it's more of a mechanic than a strat, and I think we should all be very thankful that Strife is such a forgiving game, in the sense that if you specifically envision that you're going to jungle this game, and you end up not being able to do it, you'll still have a pretty significant effect on the game. So you can just walk out to jungle and you'll be a little under-leveled or under-itemed. But if you play your cards right, you'll be able to get back on top.
Yeah, but at the same time, you're gonna be poorly You're gonna be poorly itemized if you have to go to your plan B because you're gonna have.
But see, with how like I said, it's way too early to say this is how jungle will be. This is how it should be. But another thing you can do, like I haven't played Smite in a long time. I played it way back in like alpha and whatnot. But a lot of times jungle and then would clear jungle and then go to their lane. Clear jungle, go lane. And you can do that in this. With how small the map is, you can easily leave lane just to get maybe ancients in one other camp, or like if you're, say, your glory side, the opposite side of ancients to that small camp, real easy to take all the time. You can do that, and when you do that, not only will you be taking advantage of the gold that the jungle provides, but you will also be, every time you do that, that one person is going to be getting a boost in XP. That one person that you left, as long as they're smart enough to know that when you leave to take a camp or two, that there's a chance that, if their ace may jump on them or whatever. That's common sense. Like, I shouldn't have to tell people that regardless, if you're in a 2-2 lane and one person leaves, there's a good chance of getting jumped. That's common sense, like, regardless of jungle or whatnot. But that's what I'm saying. Jungle, it doesn't have to be played strictly one way. You can play it as a pseudo jungle, take camps. There's just so much XP and so much gold in there that I think it needs to be taken advantage of, whether you have a dedicated jungle or not.
Well, see, and that's where I was kind of starting to lean towards as a conversation. We started with the potion discussion, correct? And then we transitioned into how that affects the jungle and whatnot. I think it's more likely that what you're gonna see is having lanes that have heroes that can transition in and out of the jungle without having to itemize. So, for example, I could put Hail top lane, and then every time that you push the lane or freeze the lane or you feel that you're relatively safe, you can roam out of your lane, go to the jungle, clear it, and come back to lane. And I think that reduces some of the greater complexities, and it also, if you think about it, you can apply pressure in doing that, because when you leave lane, that the enemy team doesn't know if you're just going into jungle or if you're going to roam mid lane, right, or bot lane, depending on your setup or whatnot, right? So I think there are other ways of approaching the jungle currently that I think are deliberate on the Strife's, on S2 Games' design right now, that are favorable to having a dedicated jungler, especially in competitive play and especially in pubs. I agree, though, that you could run it if you're running with a team.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's all gonna have to unfold. See, I mean, every day I figure out new routes. I figure out, ways to better optimize my gold income, and then I figure out ways to better, optimize gank paths, gank routes. What would be better to, should I apply, I full round. Right now, my standard is I'll gank bot, because bot never expects level 2 gank. It almost always gets a kill or blows pets and all that. Bot is the safe lane, and that's why I like being the guy that shows that it's not the safe lane. But it's so early that anything could happen. I've ran straight farm on Bastion to the point where I can just go level 5. Bastion can at level 6 is no problem at all, but at level 5 out Bastion can still solo like Baldy and whatnot. Can still do that kind of stuff. You have to avoid lasers, but you can still do it. It's just too early to say like what your actual purpose is, I fool around all the time. I try not to stick to like, okay, this is how I'm going to play jungle and this is how it's going to be, So far, this is just how it's been. And I think the more champs we get, the more time goes by, and hopefully less nerfs to things like pods. I think it'll evolve more. I think the more creative minds that get out of this is what it should be, this is what everyone else is doing, so it should be. I think the more people that think outside the box, the more interesting things we'll see. More innovators will come around, especially once open beta comes around. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more different strategies. I know a strategy I've run with a group of friends. It has been, when I jungle, you have a Hail top, and the Hail will constantly farm top jungle until you rotate to top jungle for Baldy control. And it has always put him at the highest GPM. And there could be a carry on our team who had great farm, tons of kills, but he still had higher GPM just from constantly farming non-stop. Constantly.
Yeah, but GPM isn't everything.
GPM. No, it's not, but it definitely makes a big difference. Especially for someone like Hale. Someone like Hale who can scale to the most scariest thing. Like someone else said earlier in chat, he's like Tryndamere on crack. Yeah, he doesn't have the ult that Trend has, but he has so much output damage.
Really
it's insane. His outputted damage is insane, and the sustain he gets from E and it scales on health. He doesn't even need to build health. He just needs attack speed. But if you throw a little bit of health on him, the sustain, he might as well be a tank with the amount of sustain he has.
And in Strife we have so many items, offensive items, that can also bump your health. So it's not like you have to sacrifice something to get the health. It's just something that kind of follows suit naturally.
Yeah, but you can also over-itemize to some extent, because things like Hexbane, any kind of hard crowd control tends to really screw up Hail.
Oh yeah. Well, Hexbane is something that we should save that topic for another day. But Hexbane is super strong right now. If anyone needs to know a great third item, like Hexbane is probably in my top 3. Like
I don't feel like Hexbane damages Hale's kit that much. I mean, considering that the game has the wonderful system known as crafting. I mean, okay, take out some components, throw some attack speed and power in there. GG. You've supplemented Hale with everything that he needs.
It's more of the problem of Hale being Hexbaned. Someone who I related him to a tank, but if you're Hale and you get Hexbaned, you're gonna get blown up. You're still squishy. You can't have that sustain without attacking. You need to be constantly.
Well, Hale should be. I mean, we all agree that Hale should be played one of 2 ways, and that's, well, actually, I'll say one of 3 ways, right? One of 2 core ways and 1 way in fights, right? He's either backdooring objectives, or he's spring initiating with his ult getting some shots in and getting the hell out, right? Now, you shouldn't be first in with Hail unless you're initiating with your ult anyway. And if someone is blowing a Hexbane on Hail, that's a mistake.
Well, it really depends, If Hale's the one snowballing, I'd save my Hexbane for him. If he's the one that is coming in and really doing the big deeps, I'd save it to the second I see that Q. Now, I agree with you. Now, if it's an even playing field and he's just, even with the rest of his team, chances are you're not going to get Hexbane.
Well, the fact that he forces you to use Hexbane on him, if you do, it's a valuable thing just to have him, because that's a very expensive item that's entire utility is being blown on a champion that is actually very useful in large part because of its ultimate initiation. You can always get out of it and still be useful.
That initiation is what makes him so damn well scary, because he can like spring boots in from the side, pop his ulti, and even if his team wasn't there, if he has a good game, he's able to deal such a tremendous amount of damage. So you could say, I don't want to spend my Hexbane on him, but you know that if you don't spend the Hexbane on him, he's just gonna wreak havoc. So he's so good.
Yeah, he's got a really strong kit.
Honestly, I'm going to tell you right now, I think he needs nerf. I've been fooling around with him, and I don't like. It's just not my style to play squishier champs. I don't like playing glass cannons, and I've built him how I build my bow, which is attack speed, health, frost prism. And then I get Crushing Mace, because Crushing Mace is insanely strong right now, especially with the legendary. But I build it all with health and attack speed, and I use the damage that the items provide. And I've done this on Hail, and I've been really beefy and still outputting insane amounts of damage, and your sustain becomes even stronger because of you're not going to be doing the damage that a pure carry Hail would do, but you're still doing something to where you are a threat to every person on their team, and you're still sustaining all their damage, if not more so. Hail right now is the scariest scaling champ in the game, I'd have to say. I've never seen more of a late game threat than a really strong, well-built Hail, and that's the fact that I can be just as scary with less damage items. I really think they need to nerf some of his output some. Especially the fact that he's almost always built like a Tryndamere. He's always almost built attack speed, power, tons of damage, hitting crits. Late game Hail, it doesn't matter, unless if you're the tank, he can just walk up to you, auto attack, and W, because his W is an auto attack reset, and that's enough to almost kill you, if not kill you. He's out of control, in my opinion, right now. Definitely.
Back to
I don't think he needs a huge nerf. I just think he needs a little tone down. And then
I'm just gonna do a called it. I'm just gonna do a called it. I'm gonna say that the next patch, there are gonna be some changes to Hill. I'm pretty sure that the way he is right now, they're not gonna leave that unaddressed.
I almost guarantee it. I mean, I knew it was coming with Moxie before they said anything about it, because Moxie's dominance was insane before they toned him down. And that's what Hail needs, is just a small tone down. Moxie's still an amazing champion. After the nerfs, there should be no reason why you're like, oh, Moxie isn't viable or anything like that. Moxie's still amazing.
And I think S2 takes... I think S2 takes good care of nerfing and buffing. We've seen this with Caprice, where they made these slight tweaks just to make her a little bit more viable, and that didn't make her ragingly OP. When they nerfed Moxie a little bit, like you said, he was still viable, and I think why they're so tremendously careful with nerfing and buffing is because we have such a limited hero pool. So, imagine where we would have a patch where they'd say, he needs to be stronger, and instantly the hero in question is like way OP. With such a small hero pool, that's going to have a really big impact on the game, because there's less natural predators for that hero in question. Whereas in other MOBAs, you have this giant hero pool, so you have at least one, two, or three natural predators
So
to oppose that OP-ness.
So I kind of want to 360 back into the jungling conversation. What you just said. Do you guys think that as they increase the size of the hero pool, we're gonna increase we're going to see an increase in the viability of the jungle? Or do you guys think it's going to take more than that? Do you guys think it's going to take perhaps buffs that you can control in the jungle, or designated tools like newer items, or changes to certain items?
I would like to see some one or two items tailored towards other jungle. Right now, the main jungle items that are tailored specifically, and obviously for jungle, are going to be the throwing axe and the ranger's vest. They're tailored to that. Ranger's vest, anyone that gets it can jungle after that. It's that much of tailored to. The fact that is I'm fine with throwing axe being the starting item for junglers. After that, I want options. Like on mages, whenever I jungle like Vex now, I get the chalice because chalice is insane and gives insanely strong sustain and whatnot. It's good without even being crafted, and I would like to see something maybe a little similar, but balanced towards jungle for mages, for at least more people who rely on spells. When I jungle Vex, I rely on my W for insanely fast wave clear. I don't rely on auto attacks. I don't do anything to buff my auto attacks outside of power. So I would definitely like to see something, maybe an item where magic damage to like jungle neutrals is increased by percent. Something like that, I think would go a long way, and it would help the viability of jungle and junglers in general. Outside of Hail being the staple.
What about you, Techie? What do you think that needs to happen for jungle to be a more attractive option for you?
More characters. There needs to be more champions. Honestly, I mean, if we did run a situation where there were bans, right, and Hail got banned, it immediately puts a situation where if you do jungle, you're starting off at a disadvantage. And the biggest reason that jungle seems like it's not viable right now is, I wouldn't even say it's because of the lack of characters. It's more so because teams aren't answering it. That's the only reason. Teams aren't adhering to the fact that, oh, there's a jungle. Okay, guys, let's counter jungle. Teams aren't counter jungling. That's the only reason why it seems like it's not viable. Because teams aren't answering it.
Well, there's also another thing. Because if we take the jungles aren't symmetrical. They're not identical to each other. So there's one party jungling in the Baldir side, and they tend to be, like we said, a bit more. They have a bit more of an advantage if they jungle in the Baldir side, because Baldir gives the gold bonus. So Baldir can shift the scales a little bit.
Well, I mean,
Baldir side is closer to the one base than it is to the other.
Well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, the jungles, minus the objective positions, the jungles are pretty much almost 100% symmetrical.
They're just swapped. They're just like mirrored on.
They're pretty much mirrored, just with an objective swap. So one, like you said. But then think about other MOBAs. That just puts emphasis on controlling your wards. It's just players need to play the games and the mechanics in the game how it was designed to be played. Control the wards. Monitor Baldir Pit. It's just not happening. People aren't answering these things.
Yeah, no, I do not see enough people using the wards. As a jungler, I make sure if I'm anywhere near one, I keep those up for my team. They make a big difference. Being able to spot one person can completely all that time he spent trying to gank. You spot him because your jungler or one of your laners grabbed the ward and was smart enough to do so. People just don't do it. They always leave them there. They think that little bit of time leaving lane is going to be that detrimental. But if they get ganked and killed, even if it's not from jungle, even if it's just from another lane,
exactly,
it's all been avoided just by taking that little bit of time it takes to grab a ward. Or if you're walking back from a base, go into that jungle and pick up that ward real quick. It's going to take you an extra 2 seconds.
So do you guys think then that, given those things, do you think we could maybe see, we could coin a designated roamer, where his primary role is to have objective control and clear the jungle when it's appropriate, right? When there's a good situation that allows for that, but not one that's just a designated jungler, right? So maybe what we'll end up is with roamers.
Thank you. I've
I'd
spoke
love
on
to
this in
see
the
it.
past. It's something that needs to happen. It's something that does happen. There's a lot of really good players that have adopted this from other MOBAs and brought it in to Strife. Right now, the only reason I would say you need to put more emphasis on roamers is simply because, once again, the jungle isn't being answered to, which kind of makes it a little unviable simply because like our biggest argument here today is because of the 2v1, right? And that's only happening
Yeah.
because people aren't playing a jungle for jungle to counter jungle. Now with that roamer, into play, controlling the objective, controlling the wards here and there, coming back and clearing a camp or whatever he wants to do and hitting that lane again and applying pressure, that, in my opinion, is a whole lot more scary than just a Hale in the jungle.
And actually, I think Hale would fill that role really well by himself, if you think about that. And then that would open up to other junglers that are not so good level 1, but then maybe they can jungle level 3 or 4 or 6,
I will tell you that I have seen this in competitive play. Strife tournament, was it Strife HQ tournament number 3? I've seen a Malady roam, clear an ancient camp, roam, get a kill, and come back with spring boots, and it's the scariest thing on the map. Honestly, it completely shuts down a solo lane.
People in general aren't taking advantage of the smallness of the map. People. I don't know why people even complain, because the way I look at it is that it just doesn't take as long to go gank. If you're in top lane and you've been pushing on their turret, and you're not getting anywhere, stagnant, all you're getting is farm, leave. Not only will you still get some gold income from the extra solo lane, that person who you left, for a period of time can get some more farm for themselves, and you can go apply pressure. You can go do something. There's too many times where people will sit in stagnant lanes, farming under tower, pushing like that, where they have more than enough potential to roam, and they could have been doing it 5 minutes before when they finally decided to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. Now, guys, I'm sure we could keep talking about this for hours on end, because it's just such, it's a very interesting matter. However, I'd like to round this down so it still remains editable into the nice podcast. We have a surprise guest on the stream right now. I've brought in Tintinfish Joe to the panel, who will explain to our Tintinfish Joe.
Oh, that
Who the hell is
sexy
that?
guy. I heard about that sexy guy.
I heard he had a beard or something.
Yeah, I hear he
I don't
smells
know.
quite fishy. He's pretty fishy, dude.
Just a heads up,
Terrible
I'm
pun.
disconnecting every so often, so I might be cut out.
Yeah.
In
But
shame
as you
is what you're
know,
doing.
as some of you may or may not know, we used to do a thing on Strife Talk called the Tip of the Week, where you could win a beta key. But that segment didn't really turn out the way I would like it to turn out. Also, the submissions are declining, and the answers getting sent in are less constructive than I would like them to be. So for now, I'm going to do one final closed beta key giveaway, and the honors go to Tintinfish Joe. The beta key will go to whoever gives the best suggestion for a Tintinfish Joe silly build TM. And Joe, why don't you explain what that entails?
So, because of all these new players coming in, a lot of the older players are having a tough time. So I want to do something where you make a mode where you severely handicap yourself with either with items or an item theme, and basically go against new players like that and see how well you did. We had a Ryzen from Ryzen TV do a 0-0-0 Hale build, where he went jungle as Hale and vowed to never get an assist, kill, or death, and he did that. I've also had builds like Tinder teaches typing, where you only get active items. So having an item theme and a silly idea will go a long way and have a lot of fun for experienced players.
Like the legendary freeze ray build. No, we had a lot of fun doing that, and it would be cool to see more of those modes. Now, for those of you tuned in, there's also two things I'd like to plug a little bit. Tomorrow there is the Strife HQ Strife tournament. It's going to be the biggest one yet. If you haven't gotten a team together, just pick up some good guys from Strife. Go on there, play a few matches, meet a few people, and go sign up for Strife HQ. It's not too late, and dabble into competitive play a little bit. It'll be a very good learning experience. And continuing on about competitive play, there is also, I'm gonna link it in the chat in a second, but there's also a new thing coming up soon that's called Play Strife. It's a subreddit that you guys can use to join tournaments with your team and host your own tournament. It's not really a set format yet, but it's something that's going to offer a little bit more of dynamic tournament vibe. So that's cool to check out as well. Now, with that said, this show is drawing to a close. I've been your host, Vexxie. You can hit me up on Twitter on twitter.com/IamVexxie. Surprise visit from Tintinfish Joe. TekkySO, who is also on Twitter with the handle X6TekkySO. Now, Squeekee and Oppositional have not yet been panel members before, so I don't know their Twitter handles or whatever shit they would like to be plugged. So guys, here's an open podium. Go.
Well, you can find me in game and add me, and we can play together. There you go. That's all I want.
No, it's forbidden. You can't play with Oppositional. Can't has. Because then he won't have room to play with me.
It's okay, because I just go around following my sheep anyway. I don't really play the game.
Likewise for me, you can find me in games named Squeekee, just like here. It doesn't change anywhere I go. Don't have a Twitter or anything. Do keep a lookout. I'm going to be working on an all-purpose jungle guide that I'm going to put on the Strife HQ to help set a nice starting point for people who are looking to jungle, where to start, what routes are best, and whatnot. Outside of that, I'll see you on the playing grounds.